I've got a river of living water, a fountain that never will run dry. It's an open heaven you're releasing, and we will never be denied. 'Cause we're stirring up deep, deep wells. We're stirring up deep, deep waters. We're gonna dance in the river. Dance in the river. 'Cause we're stirring up deep, deep wells. We're stirring up deep, deep waters. We're gonna jump in the river. Jump in the river. 'Cause deep cries out to deep, cries out to you. Deep cries out to deep, cries out to you. We cry out to you, you Jesus. I've got a river living water, fountain that never will run dry. It's an open heaven you're releasing. We will never be denied. Come on, sing it with us. 'Cause we're stirring up deep, deep wells. We're stirring up deep, deep waters. We're gonna dance in the river. Dance in the river. 'Cause we're stirring up deep, deep wells. We're stirring up deep, deep waters. We're gonna jump in the river. Jump in the river. Deep cries out to deep, cries out to you. Deep cries out to deep, cries out to you. We cry out to you, you Jesus. We're falling into deeper waters, calling out to you. We're walking into deeper waters, going after you. If he goes to the left, and then we'll go to the left. And if he goes to the right, and then we'll go to the right. We're gonna jump, 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 jump in the river. Jump, 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 everybody. If he goes to the left, and then we'll go to the left. And if he goes to the right, then we'll go to the right. We're gonna dance, 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 dance in the river. Dance, 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 everybody. If he goes to the left, and then we'll go to the left. If he goes to the right, and then we'll go to the right. We're gonna jump, 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 jump in the river. Jump, 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 everybody. If he goes to the left, and then we'll go to the left. And if he goes to the right, then we'll go to the right. We're gonna dance, 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 dance in the river. Dance, 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 everybody. If he goes to the left, and then we'll go to the left. If he goes to the right, and then we'll go to the right. We're gonna shout, 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 shout in the river. Shout, 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 yeah. Deep cries out to deep, cries out to you. Deep cries out to deep, cries out to you. We cry out to you, you Jesus. Deep cries out to deep, cries out to you. Deep cries out to deep, cries out to you. Deep cry out to we cry out to you, you Jesus.
Well, then, welcome back. We're going to do Thursday Bible study today. I hope you're watching on Thursday, and I hope you're having a good week with us as you watch these videos. Today, we're going to continue our look at the book of Ecclesiastes, and we're working from a book by Mark Matlock called Living a Life That Matters. I want to remind you of that. So this morning, we're going to talk about money, and we're going to talk about power, and the first thing I want to talk about is an illustration that Mark talks about, and it's kind of personal because I was in the area where this gentleman lives, and I watched a lot of this unfold personally. But Christmas 2002, Jack and Jewel Whitaker made the news for winning the lottery during Christmas. $314 million lottery ticket. That $314 million at the time was the largest of any lottery ticket that had been sold. After taxes, the man took home $113 million. Now, you're already thinking in your minds, what would I do with that? How would I use that? Well, boy, wouldn't that be nice? He did some good things with his money. $7 million he gave to three different churches. Three different churches he gave $7 million to. He started a charity to help find jobs, to go to college, to get food. He built a neighborhood playground. He bought coloring books for the needy. And he still, after all that, had millions and millions of dollars. A year later, I spoke to the secretary of the church that he had given some of the money to. And I was asking her about the whole situation. And she told me that every week when he won that lottery ticket, every week for quite some time, they were receiving 2 pickup truck full of letters and requests for money to Jack Whitaker. Pickup trucks full of mail that they would take to him in bags, large bags. They were receiving those letters at the church, and they were asking for money. Everybody thought, oh, he just has plenty, he could give it to me. Now I want you to hear his wife's quote. 2 years after winning the money, she was quoted in the Charleston Gazette. She said, "I wish all of this never would have happened. I wish I would have torn the ticket up." You see, it created so many issues. Jack has been arrested multiple times for DUI. He was ordered into a rehab program. He began a major gambling problem. He got into fights. He got into trouble at strip clubs. He was robbed repeatedly. His granddaughter, Brandy, died under some mysterious circumstances. The point is that it was just constant turmoil in his life once he won that money. You see, what we want to talk about, what Solomon is going to teach us is money isn't enough. It just simply isn't. It's meaningless. It's vanity. It allows you to chase after the wind, as he refers to so much in Ecclesiastes, but you do so in a nicer car, but that's about it. And it's not just Jack. Listen to these words. "I wish it never happened. It was a total nightmare," said William Post, and he won $16.2 million in the Pennsylvania lottery. And he now lives on $450 a month and food stamps. "Winning the lottery isn't always what it's cracked up to be," said Evelyn Adams, who won the New Jersey lottery twice and now lives in a trailer. Suzanne Williams won $4.2 million in the Virginia lottery in 1993, and she ended up deeper in debt than she was before. It's not always the answer to the questions that we ask. Not every millionaire has problems, we understand that. But they all learn that money does not buy happiness or a satisfying life or lasting meaning or inner peace. But we all think that money can solve all our problems. The reality is money can cause as many problems as it solves. I'm not going to read this passage today in the time, but I want to give reference to it. I'm going to tell you about some of the things in it, but I want you to look up later 1 Kings chapter 10 and read verses 14 through 29. 1 Kings chapter 10, 14 through 29. But here's some of the things it would tell you. Solomon was a rich man. Solomon had $1.26 billion, 25 tons of gold, and that value would change, but he had 25 tons of gold coming to him from other countries every year. Not just over a lifetime, but every year. He had gold, they describe in 1 Kings there, cups and household items and military shields made out of gold. His throne was 6 steps high. It had a pair of lions on each, and beside it the armrests, all made of gold. And then you can read this, I think it's about verse 21, we were looking at it a little bit ago. So much silver lying around the city that nobody made anything out of silver because it was worthless. It was rocks, as worthless as the rocks on the streets. To have a garage for all of his things wasn't big enough. He built cities to house his chariots and his horses. Entire cities. He had 1,400 chariots and drivers. He had 12,000 horses. He built a temple, and it was magnificent, and at the time was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Still considered that, 7 wonders of the ancient world. But then he built his palace, and that was filled like a museum with articles and gifts from around the world. And his palace was even bigger and more spectacular than the temple. In 1 Kings chapter 4, you'll find in his palace, it took millions just to run his palace. He would use 1,700 gallons of fine flour, 3,500 gallons of meal, 10 stall-fed cattle, 20 pasture-fed cattle, 100 sheep and goats, deer, roebucks, gazelles, birds. What kind of a feast could you prepare with that amount of food and that amount of animals available to you? And that wasn't just for a feast. That was what he used every single day in his palace. If Solomon had been a poor monk and said money was meaningless, we'd go, yeah, right. But instead, when you can buy and sell the world and say meaningless, maybe there's something he's saying that we should listen to. Back to Ecclesiastes, let's see some things that he said. Eventually, someone else will control everything that you have worked for. Look at Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 21. For a man may do his work with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then he must leave all he owns to someone who has not worked for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. Work hard, earn it all, and then leave it to someone else. Or verse 19, talking about the person that you're leaving it to, I believe. And who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool, yet he will have control over all the work into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. So you leave everything you've worked hard for, and who knows whether they'll be wise or foolish with it. And then chapter 5, there's several verses that speak to this, beginning in verses 8 and 9. It's funny because he's indicting himself. Verse 8 and 9 of chapter 5 of Ecclesiastes. If you see the poor oppressed in a district and justice and rights denied, do not be surprised at such things, for one official is eyed by a higher one, and over them both are others higher still. The increase from the land is taken by all. The king himself profits from the fields. He's indicting himself. Government is part of the problem. It's amazing. Civilized government is very, very expensive. And yet, without it, we'd probably have chaos. And then look at verse 10. Whoever loves money never has money enough. When is enough enough? That's a strange thing. There is no such thing as enough. And what benefit are they to the owner except to feast his eyes on the... Oh, I'm reading verse 11. Excuse me. Verse 10. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with his income. This too is meaningless. We'll get to verse 11, but I jumped ahead there. Someone who pursues wealth never wakes up one day and says, hey, today I'm good. I don't need another dime. I've never met anybody who said that, whether they're wealthy or not. Millionaires, I'm told, I don't know very many of them. I've met a few, but and I'm certainly not one myself. But it's amazing. We talk about how they get to be rich. No matter how much money they have, they still complain about how much everything costs. Everything they buy. Can you believe that's so expensive? Well, I know you can buy it like 12 times over, but it doesn't matter. Everything is expensive. Now, the verse 11. Having money is expensive. This is interesting. As goods increase, so do those who consume them. And what benefit are they to the owner except to feast his eyes on them? The idea is having money is expensive because you create things that will create more money, but you constantly have to clean, repair, replace whatever it is that you're putting out as a product. It is just a constant cycle. And then this verse is really telling, verse 12. The sleep of a laborer is sweet, whether he eats little or much. That's pretty nice. You get tired, whether you get a lot to eat, you work hard, and that sleep comes easy. But then the verse says, but the abundance of a rich man permits him no sleep. In other words, he's worried about his money. He's constantly, it robs him of rest. What's the point of being rich then if you can't even rest? Storing up a lot of money is worthless. Verse 13, I have seen a grievous evil under the sun, wealth hoarded to the harm of its owner. There's story after story, and you could look in the Guinness Records, Book of Records. In the 1800s, there was a miser who died, hoarded money, but was worth millions. But I believe it was a woman, if I remember right. She died in a freezing apartment, and she died of malnutrition and had millions of dollars at her disposal, but she didn't want to spend it. Verse 14, another thing he's seen, wealth lost through misfortune, so that when he has a son, there is nothing left to him. Man, you never know. You might I've known a lot of people who think they have a lot of money to live on, and then comes a medical problem, a business failure. There's legal troubles, a bad economy, stock market crashes, weather creates issues for people financially. We just think about the last couple of months with a pandemic across the world and what it's done to our economy. Things happen, and money can quickly vanish. Then you can say, there's Malcolm Forbes. You know, you really can't take it with you when you die. So Malcolm Forbes Forbes, Fortune 500, and quite a wealthy man. He said this, he said, he who dies with the most toys wins. Well, that's kind of funny sentiment, but the reality is, a later understanding, he who dies with the most toys still dies. You can't take it with you. I think Solomon would have put that statement on a bumper sticker of his chariot. He who dies with the most toys still dies. He would put that on his chariot, but it would be in gold. He'd put it top of the line. I want you to hear verses 15 through 17. Naked a man comes from his mother's womb, and as he comes, so he departs. He takes nothing from his labor that he can carry in his hand. This too is a grievous evil. As a man comes, so he departs, and what does he gain, since he toils for the wind? All his days he eats in darkness with great frustration, affliction, and anger. Boy, Solomon, who had the ability to test it all, he really gave us a sad picture here of what things were like. Misfortune comes, whatever might happen, frustration, affliction, anger. Having money is not a sin, but loving it, living for it, is. So most of us would still want to try to live with more money. All of us would like that. But until you can do that, until you can make more money and do things for God with that money, consider this. Thank God for what you have. Honor Him with the tithe. And we can explain that later. Parents can explain that. Ask them what a tithe is. Enjoy what you have. Don't dwell on what you don't have. Boy, I wish I had this or that. I've never been one who's worried about name brand clothes, but some people are. I don't care what's on my clothes, just as long as they fit properly, or you know, my shoes. They don't have to be $150 shoes. I wear very inexpensive shoes. Choose contentment in your food, in your clothing, in your shelter. If you have those three things, you have more than most of the people in the world, really. So be thankful. And then give it away. Paul attributes a saying to Jesus that says it's better to give than to receive. Better to give than to receive. And it is the only time in Scripture that we have a quote from Jesus that's not in the Gospels. So Paul has learned a quote from Jesus himself and gives it to us. And if it is the saying of Christ, then it is worth our consideration. It is better to give than to receive. And then serve God first. It's not wrong to want things, but check your desires with God's desires. And when you have money, we want to switch gears for one last thing for these few moments we have. There's an old adage, I called it the golden rule and really confused some people, but those who have the gold make the rules. It seems like the rich people are the powerful people in our world. Think about how early we learn things. Like I was talking to some of our students about this. If your place in the band is second chair, what's your goal? Well, I'd hope you'd have a goal to be first chair. If you get nominated to the homecoming court, what do you hope was going to happen? You're going to be elected queen. What do you do when you make a team in sports? Well, you want to be on the starting squad. No matter what the sport is, you want to be one of the people on the field playing. And if you're one of those starters and you're playing, what do you want to be? The MVP. I was a lineman when I played football. I didn't have any chance of being the MVP, but I thought I wanted it. Everybody wanted it. Wouldn't it be cool to be the MVP as a lineman? In our culture, we just define success or failure by how you climb the ladder, how you make the next step. And the reality is that success is a relative term. It means different things to different people. A success today may be considered a failure a year from now. Just think about how many celebrities we see. They might have a hit song today. Next year, nobody knows their name. Or who's in and who's out. Boy, that changes quickly. And so celebrity and power and status like that can be fleeting. I know it's difficult for those of you in junior high, and this is geared to a junior high camp. Middle schoolers, the people who are successful at middle school not always are successful at high school, because by the time you get to high school, some of your friends have caught up to you, and maybe their physical bodies, so they've begun to get better skills at what they're doing athletically or musically, or maybe they're excelling with academics. But high school, you'll see the success change a little bit. And then when you're successful in high school, go on to college. Well, now you're a small fish in a bigger pond, and it doesn't. You don't have the same success. Or when you get out of college, it's really strange. You get in your job, your line of work. Nobody cares what you did in college. They just don't. They just want you to do your job and make money for them. And so if a person gets their value from their status and from their power and who they are in life, they think they are, man, that changes very, very quickly. I want you to read, I'm running out of time this morning, but I want you to read Ecclesiastes 4, verses 13 through 16. It talks about a kid who works his way up from the streets practically and becomes king. It gives you a vision of that. Imagine that happening. And it's a true rags to riches story. But, eventually that kid gets old, and somebody else comes along and replaces the king. That another hotshot kid, if you will, takes his place. It's simply how it is. If you have popularity, status, influence currently, you won't have it for long. It's the simple nature of things. There is nothing wrong with wanting or to achieve great things, having goals, to build incredible structures, to compete in the Olympic Games, or cure a disease or make a movie. Goals are good. We have to have goals, and we need to be trying to improve ourselves. But if you believe achieving these things will make your life matter, you're just chasing after the wind. That's what Solomon teaches us. And so I would hope that no matter what you find yourself doing for the rest of your days, and you're so young, you've got plenty of time to decide that, and you can change it. Lots of people change their occupations. I want you to listen to what the call of God is in your life, because that's what's important. The call of God is not just for pastors. If you're ditch digging or you're president of the United States, you better be making sure that you're called by God to do those things. And I want you to remember as we close, God's way is greater than anything you might dream of, always greater than anything you might dream of. And contentment will only be found in your obedience to His command. Let me pray for you as we close today. Thanks for listening. Father, thank you for loving us. Thank you for giving us the opportunities to do the things that we do. Help us to keep the priorities straight on what's important about money and about power and status, and help us to use what you've given us financially, what you've given us as a place or position in life, to use for your honor and glory, to be used of you to spread a word that people can come to know you just as well. Father, give us that insight, give us that wisdom to share that story with everybody we encounter. And we'll give you praise through it all. In the name of Christ, amen.